Hi, I'm Meir Shargal. I lead the strategy and transformation practice at Utilligent, a utility-focused operational consulting firm. Thank you for tuning in for this webinar on a regulatory and policy change during the post-COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar will cover the challenges utilities customer and regulator face as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Challenges evolve around revenues, cash flow, and day-to-day operation, keeping the lights on. How regulatory bodies like NARUC, FERC, NERC, and others react. And last, regulatory and policy changes that are or will change during or post-COVID-19. Now a little bit about me. I bring more than 28 years of experience delivering strategic business transformation focused on the energy and the utility industry. I focus on utilities because affordable and reliable energy is integral to the development of most industries. Recently, Utilligent authored a report in partnership with the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commission, NARUC. The survey addressed four related focus areas: distributed energy resources, energy efficiency and demand response, digital grid, and central station generation. The scope also includes storage, transportation and electrification, and the evolving utility business model. The goal was to take a regulatory pulse of those focus areas in order to gain insight into regulatory activity in each area. You can find a copy of the publication section in the publication section on Utilligent website or the link on this slide. COVID-19 has created unforeseeable challenges for electric utilities around financial liquidity, authorized revenue recovery, rate design, supply chain, day-to-day operation. Regulators and utilities should proactively address those issues since it presents challenges for a utility to recover this lost revenue through the typical rate case analysis. The goal is to maintain utilities' financial health in these difficult times. COVID-19 outbreak is causing far-reaching concerns and economic hardship for consumer, businesses, and community across the globe. The situation is fast-moving with widespread effects. It's created an urgency for utilities to contain cost. Some of those areas that are top mind for utility leadership are crisis management and response. Basically, existing business continuity plan are not capable of handling the fast-moving and unknown variable of an outbreak like COVID-19. Utilities need to develop incident management and scenario plans that are specific to this crisis. Second, workforce. Behind human welfare, there are other people challenges to tackle, including support remote working at scale, and addressing mobility concerns like travel rules, HR policy, and first aid plan. Thirdly, operation and supply chain. The ripple effect of the COVID-19 outbreak are difficult to model and assess, but utilities need to start thinking about how to mitigate supply chain distributions. And lastly, financial and liquidity. As business activity slows, utilities are going to see low revenue resulting in less cash flow. Managing the cash and liquidity position will be crucial in the weeks ahead. Data from the Electric Power Institute, EPRI, shows that Italy experienced an 18 to 21% reduction in peak demand and energy use on a year-over-year basis in the 5 to 7 days after its lockdown began. Spain saw up to 15% reduction in peak demand and energy use during the first week and lesser impact 7 to 10% during the second week. New York and California saw 3 to 7% reduction in peak demand and energy use in the days following the city and statewide lockdowns. The full impact of electricity usage are not yet known. But grid operators say demand is both shifting and falling. Regulated utility rely on volumetric rates. That means that utility charge more as the customer use more services to recover the revenue authorized by the regulator. If usage falls below what is anticipated, the utility does not receive as much revenue from the volumetric rate as they and the regulator projected, leaving it short of the amount of revenues authorized by the regulator to operate the business and earn a return on its investment. This creates under-recovery problem for the utility. So what can be done to address this under-recovery? Some states, such as California, Arizona, New York, decouple utility sales from revenues, which mitigate the impact of declining electric sales over time. However, utility rates in such states still use the cost of service model to design rates based on the utility forecasted sale for its test year. COVID-19 has led to reduced operations for many businesses nationwide, and therefore a reduction in electricity usage by these businesses. Some businesses may never reopen. Depending on the degree and the duration of this reduction, utility may face a significant problem with under-recovery, impacting their sustainability. Michigan-based CMS Energy, Duke Energy, Hawaiian Electric, and Pinnacle West Capital, the parent company of Arizona Public Service, are in early stages of rate cases, and potentially they can see their return on equity lowered by the regulators. While COVID-19 may boost incrementally the amount of electricity consumed in homes by reducing commercial and industrial usage, it has a significant net impact on overall usage and the amount of revenues the electric utility recover from its commercial and industrial customers. These load losses for which the utility would normally be compensated cannot be fully offset by increased residential revenue. Shifting loads away from the commercial rates and onto residential rates creates several problems. First, the amount of revenues for the commercial and industrial classes drops. Those rates usually subsidize the residential rates. Second, the amount of load receiving the subsidy or below-cost service increases. Many residential customers would have challenges paying their bills. Providing electric utility service is largely a fixed-cost enterprise. The utility cannot scale down its cost to match lower demand because its costs are tied up in maintaining the system that delivers electricity, regardless of how much electricity is flowing and to whom. The combination of the reduction in total amount of electricity sold, the change in loads among customer classes, and running a fixed enterprise create the risk of under-recovery. Recognizing the necessity of electricity service, many utilities and regulators nationally have decided to reduce or eliminate service disconnection in response to the virus and the economic fallout that it has caused. In California, the Public Utility Commission required regulated utility to suspend service disconnection for non-payment and suspend proof requirements for low-income energy programs. Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Virginia, and Wisconsin issues similar order. In Maryland, the state prohibited accrual of late fees as of March 16. Wisconsin required utilities to reasonably attempt to reconnect service to residential customers who were disconnected. It is highly likely that the disconnection moratoria associated with COVID-19 will increase the uncollectible balances for utilities. Utilities will likely seek to recover the lost revenue, but the typical rate case used to set forward-looking rates may not fully address the unique situation. Rate cases in general analyze the utility cost and investment to determine what rates going forward will reasonably cover the utility cost and give it an opportunity to recover a reasonable return on its investment. Because rates are forward-looking and based on utility costs during a typical rate period, regulators often eliminate from recovery any non-recurring cost. If COVID-19 losses left unrecovered, they could greatly affect the utility financial health, creating liquidity problems as utilities need access to capital markets to finance their operations. In many ways, the COVID-19 pandemic resembles a large-scale natural disaster, like a hurricane. While COVID-19 will not destroy physical infrastructure like a hurricane would, it has the potential to materially reduce load, increase uncollectible accounts, and cut revenues on a system-wide basis. Also, like a hurricane, the event is non-recurring. State regulators previously used disaster riders to surcharge to address short-term cost and revenue anomalies. These disaster riders typically are approved more quickly after the disaster than a rate case would, and with far fewer issues for considerations. As it is a temporary cost recovery tool, a disaster rider more closely matches the hopefully short-term and one-time event of the COVID-19 pandemic. For the utility, a disaster rider provides more immediate cost recovery than other mechanisms. It has minimum regulatory lag. For a regulator, a temporary disaster rider ensures that the utility does not recover added revenue longer than it should, and it places a lesser burden on the regulator's resources to process these cases. The Public Utility Commission of Texas just implemented a pandemic rider that adds the volumetric surcharge to current rates intended to mitigate the effect of lost revenue caused by prohibiting utilities from disconnecting customers for non-payment, and it relies for its authority on the governor's natural disaster declaration. Regulatory bodies like NARUC, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commission, FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and NERC, the North America Electric Reliability Corporation, are all releasing statements relaxing some regulation and delaying deadlines to help customers that struggle with bills and address utility revenues reduction and cost recovery challenges. NARUC released a statement on March 18 where President Brendan Presley asking state regulatory to place moratorium on service disconnection during the pandemic, which many states did. The map on the right highlights the states in place the placed moratorium on disconnections. NARUC also asked the Federal Communication Commission to require wireless carriers to lift data caps and drop data coverage charges on wireless plan to minimize the disruption, as many of us work from home, and ensuring that students left out of schools are not left behind academically. COVID-19 highlights the fact that utility service and its effective regulation is closely tied to the public health and the overall public welfare. Without energy, hospitals cannot function. The picture on the right shows the number of policies that each state issues as a result of COVID-19. States like Hawaii, Idaho, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wyoming, all filing can now be done exclusively by e-filing. Several states such as Hawaii, Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, as well as FERC, are delaying deadlines for at least certain filings and/or commissions decisions, while legislation introduced in Alaska would delay all statutory and regulatory deadlines for commission actions. At least two states have opened broader COVID-19 dockets, including Arizona, which is exploring utility preparedness to ensure safe and reliable operation during the pandemic, and Connecticut, which is considering additional way to provide financial relief for ratepayers behind disconnection suspensions. FERC and NERC is in a somewhat unprecedented move temporarily suspended or relaxed certain utility regulation to give utilities more flexibility in response to COVID-19. Complying with reliability standards have been relaxed in three areas. For the period of March 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, COVID-19 will be considered an acceptable basis for non-compliance with obtaining and maintaining personal certification. Between March 1st, 2020 and July 31st, 2020, COVID-19 will be an acceptable reason for case-by-case non-compliance with reliability standard requirements that involve periodic action taken. Lastly, until July 31st, 2020, at the earliest, regional entities will postpone on-site audit certification and other on-site activities. FERC also grants NERC's request to delay implementation of several new cybersecurity rules. Some standards that were set to take effect on July 1st will now take effect October 1st, and others are pushed out to January 1st, 2021, or even as far as April 1st, 2021. The California Public Utility Commission is looking for ways to reduce the impact of higher energy bills as a result of stay-at-home order. They're looking at several options. First one, shift the timing of climate credits customers receive each year to help give some financial reliefs. For example, move the 2 monthly electric credits of $32.28 apply for the bill in April for energy use in March, and bills out of October for energy customers consume in September to be paid in August and September to recover higher summer month bills. Second, options, extending less expensive winter rates by a few months into the summer. The default San Diego Gas and Electric winter rates that run from November 1st to May 31st ranges from 20 cents per kilowatt hour to 27 cents, provided customers stay within the 130% of their allotted baseline each month. Summer rates, in effect from June 1st to October 31st, are much higher, ranges from 20 cents per kilowatt hour to 46 cents, depending on whether consumption comes during off-peak or non-peak hours. Prices go much higher when customers exceeded the 130% of their baselines. With summer rates coming in just a matter of weeks, extending the winter rates until the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted would likely lead to lower bills. A third option, suspending time of use plans. With more people at home now, why not suspend time of use rules? While it is more difficult under normal circumstances for many customers to run their appliances in the late morning or early afternoon because they were at work or at school, consumers now at home during the day and can more easily shift their energy use from the higher cost hours between 4 to 9 p.m. The last option is suspend the rate increase. Last September, the California PUC approved a rate increase for San Diego Gas and Electric over the next 3 years. The decision called for 6.74% increase in 2020. Why not just suspend or trim the rate increase during the COVID-19 crisis? And now for some concluding thoughts. If there is any silver lining in this crisis, it is that it will leave us better prepared for future pandemic. It even may compel us to improve our regulatory architecture for the long haul. There is really no existing playbook on how to handle COVID-19. That forced the utility to get creative. Some examples include Snohomish County Public Utility District. They have been tackling outage restoration crew, keeping all members together as intact teams. Means if one members of the team come down with the virus, cross-contamination has been minimized since that employee have been working with the same people. They also has stopped field work beside outage restoration. Nevada Energy looking at distribution operation to work from home. This is really unheard of 6 months ago. They're also facing some supply chain issue procuring new transformer from China. NYPA, New York Power Authority, cut the scope of a planned outage at one of their generation plants to only things that could be considered essential to getting them through the summer operational period. And SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility, is deferring any infrastructure project that were planned based on assumptions on projected growth in the utility service territory, since that growth is now uncertain. Power and utility companies have strong track record when it comes to preparing for emergencies. As a provider of critical infrastructure, the industry should plan for and be prepared to respond to many foreseeable hazards, including health emergencies. But even the best thought out and thoroughly tested business continuity plans should be adaptable to fully address the fast-moving and unknown variables of an outbreak like COVID-19. Typical contingency plans enable operational effectiveness following events like natural disasters, cyber incidents, and power outages, among others. Health emergencies add distinctive twists, including the potential of a widespread quarantines, workforce disruptions, and travel restriction that may be complicated previously tested continuity plan. Reducing barriers to flow of capital and labor is common thread to improve the performance of energy investment and operations under emergency and routine conditions.